Any last words, traitor? The guard's sneer cut through the air as John stood defiant, facing the end. John looked at the crowd, his eyes lingering on Sarah. For freedom, he declared, his voice unwavering. The shot echoed, and Sarah's world shattered. She clutched her swollen belly, her heart pounding with both fear and resolve. The Galactic Empire had taken her husband, but she would protect their unborn child at any cost. Under the cover of darkness, Sarah fled, navigating the maze of back alleys and abandoned buildings. Each step was a reminder of John's sacrifice, each breath a vow of vengeance. Her baby, Alex, would be born into a world where freedom was not just a dream. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah found refuge in an isolated hideout. Here, amidst the silence, she gave birth to Alex, a beacon of hope in a dark world. She cradled him, tears of joy and sorrow mingling on her cheeks. "Your father dreamed of a better world," she whispered to Alex, "and I will make sure you see it." The dim light of dawn crept into the hideout, casting long shadows on the cold stone walls. Sarah lay awake, Alex nestled in her arms. The silence was broken only by the soft hum of distant machinery and the occasional chirp of a bird outside. Sarah's thoughts raced, each one a painful reminder of the life she had lost and the uncertain future she faced. She rose quietly, careful not to wake Alex, and moved to the small window. The city beyond was a desolate landscape, dominated by the Empire's presence. Patrols were frequent, their ominous figures a constant threat. Sarah knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. A soft whimper from Alex drew her back. She picked him up, his small body warm and comforting against her chest. "We'll find a way," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "We have to." As days turned into nights, Sarah's resolve hardened. She spent her evenings studying the movements of the patrols, noting their routines. She prepared a small pack with essentials, ready for the moment when they would need to flee again. One night, the sound of footsteps outside their door jolted her awake. Heart pounding, she clutched Alex to her chest and pressed herself against the wall, listening. The footsteps grew louder, then paused. Sarah held her breath, praying they would pass. After what felt like an eternity, the steps resumed and faded into the distance. The close call spurred her into action. She knew they couldn't stay there any longer. The next morning, with Alex securely wrapped against her, Sarah set out. She moved cautiously through the city, sticking to shadows and avoiding main thoroughfares. Every face she saw was a potential enemy, every noise a possible threat. Her journey took her to the outskirts of the city, to a rundown sector where the Empire's presence was less pronounced. Here, in the ruins of an old factory, she found temporary refuge. The air was thick with the smell of rust and decay, but it was a place to rest, to gather strength for the next move. In the stillness of the night, Sarah would talk to Alex, telling him stories of his father. "Your dad was a brave man," she would say, her voice soft and filled with emotion. "He fought for what he believed in. One day, you'll understand why he did what he did." Weeks turned into months, and Sarah's determination never wavered. She scavenged what she could, trading with other outcasts and avoiding Imperial patrols. Her life became a series of calculated risks, each one a step closer to survival. One evening, as she was returning to their hideout with some meager supplies, she heard voices. Ducking behind a crumbling wall, she listened intently. The voices were low, conspiratorial. "Resistance members." Sarah's heart leapt. She waited until the voices faded, then cautiously approached the area they had been. She found a scrap of paper pinned to a post, a simple message: "Hope is not lost. The resistance lives." She memorized the details and made her way back to Alex. "We're not alone," she whispered to him, a newfound hope kindling in her chest. "There are others out there, fighting like we are." Days later, she found the resistance cell. They were wary at first, but Sarah's determination and the story of her husband's sacrifice won them over. They welcomed her into their ranks, providing a sense of community and purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. Sarah trained hard, learning how to fight, to strategize, to survive. The resistance members became her family, united by a common goal. Together, they planned their missions, each one a strike against the oppressive regime. Through it all, Alex remained her anchor, his presence a constant reminder of why she fought. She would look into his eyes and see John's spirit. "We will win," she would tell him, her voice firm with conviction. "For you, for your father, for all of us." The day finally came when the resistance was ready to launch a major attack. Sarah stood among her comrades, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The plan was risky, but it was their best shot at striking a significant blow against the Empire. As they moved into position, Sarah felt a sense of calm wash over her. She was ready. For John, for Alex, for all those who had suffered under the Empire's tyranny. She would fight with everything she had. The battle was fierce, the air filled with the sounds of gunfire and explosions. Sarah fought with a ferocity born of years of pain and determination. Beside her, her comrades fell, but they pressed on, driven by the hope of a better future. In the chaos, Sarah found herself face to face with one of the officers responsible for her husband's death. Rage surged through her, and she fought with a single-minded intensity. The officer fell, and Sarah felt a grim satisfaction settle over her. As the dust settled and the sounds of battle faded, the resistance stood victorious. It was a small victory, but a significant one. The Empire had been dealt a blow, and the spark of rebellion had been ignited. Sarah looked around at her comrades, at the hope and determination in their eyes. She knew the fight was far from over, but they had taken a crucial first step. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a brighter future. She picked up Alex, holding him close. "We did it," she whispered. "We're one step closer." And in that moment, surrounded by the remnants of battle and the promise of what was to come, Sarah felt a sense of peace. Sarah adjusted to life in hiding, nurturing Alex and teaching him the values John had died for. Their days were filled with the simple joys of motherhood, interspersed with the constant fear of discovery. Alex grew quickly, a curious and bright child. On Alex's first birthday, their fragile peace was shattered. Imperial forces, relentless in their pursuit, stormed their hideout. The confrontation was brief and brutal. Alex was taken from her, his lifeless body a stark reminder of the Empire's cruelty. Wounded and devastated, Sarah lay on the ground, her body broken, but her spirit aflame. Grief morphed into a fierce determination. She would not let Alex's death be in vain. With the last of her strength, she escaped once more, now driven by a burning desire for vengeance. Sarah's world had shrunk to the size of the derelict building she now called home. Hidden in the shadows of the city's outskirts, she lived a life of quiet desperation, each day a struggle to remain unseen. She had carved out a routine that kept her and Alex safe, moving only when necessary, speaking to no one. Each morning began with a careful check of the perimeter. Sarah would peer through the grime-covered windows, scanning for any signs of Imperial patrols. Satisfied, she would then turn her attention to Alex, who greeted each day with wide-eyed wonder. His laughter was a balm to her soul, a reminder of the innocence she fought to preserve. "Good morning, my little star," she whispered, lifting him from his makeshift crib. Alex gurgled in response, his small hands reaching for her hair. She smiled, a rare lightness in her heart. For a moment, she allowed herself to believe they were safe. Their days were simple. Sarah scavenged for food and supplies, always wary of the dangers that lurked around every corner. She taught Alex words and songs, filling their tiny world with stories of hope and courage. "Your father was a brave man," she would say, her voice steady even as her heart ached. "He dreamed of a world where you could be free." One evening, as they huddled together in their makeshift home, the sound of distant footsteps reached Sarah's ears. Her heart raced as she extinguished their small fire, plunging them into darkness. She held Alex close, willing him to stay quiet. The footsteps grew louder, then paused outside their door. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She reached for the knife she kept hidden under her mattress, her fingers trembling. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. Moonlight spilled into the room, revealing a young man, no older than 20, his face gaunt and eyes wide with fear. "Please," he whispered, raising his hands. "I'm not with the Empire." Sarah hesitated, the knife still clutched in her hand. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice low and fierce. "My name is Ben," he replied, his voice shaking. I'm with the resistance. I was followed and needed a place to hide. She studied him for a moment, then lowered the knife. Close the door, she instructed, quickly. Ben did as he was told, then slumped against the wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Thank you, he said, his eyes filled with gratitude. Sarah nodded, her guard still up. Why were you followed? I was delivering supplies to another cell, Ben explained. Got caught in an ambush. They're getting more aggressive, more desperate to crush any sign of rebellion. Sarah's mind raced. If the Empire was intensifying its efforts, it was only a matter of time before they found her and Alex. She needed to be smarter, faster, more prepared. You can stay for the night, she said finally, but you leave at dawn. Ben nodded gratefully. Thank you. I promise I won't bring trouble to your door. As Ben settled into a corner, Sarah returned to Alex, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and determination. She couldn't let them be caught off guard again. The stakes were too high. The next morning, Sarah woke to the sound of Alex's laughter. Ben was already up, preparing to leave. Thank you for your kindness, he said softly. If you ever need help, find us. The resistance is stronger than you think. Sarah nodded, watching as he slipped out the door and disappeared into the early morning mist. She knew she couldn't afford to stay in one place for too long. The Empire was closing in, and she needed to stay ahead of them. Weeks passed in a blur of survival. Sarah moved them frequently, never staying in one place long enough to be noticed. Each move was a risk, but it was a necessary one. She was determined to keep Alex safe, no matter the cost. On the day of Alex's first birthday, Sarah allowed herself a rare moment of celebration. She found a small, abandoned park on the outskirts of the city, a place where Alex could see the sky and feel the grass beneath his feet. As they played, Sarah's heart swelled with love and sorrow. She wished John could see their son. As the sun began to set, Sarah gathered Alex in her arms and headed back to their latest hideout. She felt a sense of peace, a fleeting moment of happiness. But that peace was shattered as she approached the building and saw the door ajar. Fear gripped her heart as she rushed inside, her mind racing. The sight that greeted her turned her blood to ice. Imperial soldiers stood in the middle of the room, their guns trained on her. Sarah's eyes darted to Alex, who was still in her arms, oblivious to the danger. Hand over the child, one of the soldiers commanded, his voice cold and authoritative. No, Sarah spat, backing away. You'll have to kill me first. The soldier's eyes narrowed. That can be arranged. In a blur of motion, Sarah drew her knife and lunged at the nearest soldier. The room erupted in chaos. Gunshots rang out, and Sarah felt a searing pain in her side. She fought desperately, her only thought to protect Alex, but she was outnumbered and outmatched. A soldier tore Alex from her grasp, and Sarah's scream of rage and despair echoed through the room. She was thrown to the ground, her vision blurring as she saw the lifeless body of her son. Darkness closed in, and she welcomed it. When Sarah awoke, the room was silent. Pain lanced through her body, but it was nothing compared to the agony in her heart. She crawled to where Alex lay, his small body still and cold. She gathered him in her arms, tears streaming down her face. Alex, she whispered, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. Grief and rage consumed her. The Empire had taken everything from her, but they hadn't broken her spirit. She would make them pay. With the last of her strength, she stumbled out of the hideout, Alex's body held close. She moved through the city like a ghost, driven by a single, burning desire for vengeance. The resistance had to be stronger than ever, and she would be at its forefront. For Alex, for John, for all those who had suffered under the Empire's tyranny. Sarah stood at the heart of the Resistance's underground bunker, a converted old factory hidden beneath layers of rubble and secrecy. The air was thick with anticipation and the smell of metal and oil. Her fellow fighters, a mix of humans and aliens, moved purposefully around her, preparing for the mission that could change everything. Sarah, we need your input on the infiltration plan, said Jarek, a grizzled veteran with a cybernetic arm. He was one of the leaders of the Resistance, and his respect for Sarah had grown over months of training and missions. Sarah nodded, her face set in determination. She spread a map of the Imperial stronghold on the table. We'll use the maintenance tunnels to enter the lower levels. It's the least guarded route, she explained, pointing to various entry points. Jarek grunted in agreement. Once inside, we split into two teams. One will create a diversion in the hangar, while the other heads to the command center to take control of communications. Sarah's heart pounded as she discussed the details. This mission was personal for her. It was a chance to strike at the heart of the Empire, to make them pay for all the lives they had destroyed. As night fell, the Resistance fighters gathered in the main hall, their faces illuminated by the dim, flickering lights. Sarah stood before them, her voice steady. This mission is dangerous, but it's our best chance to deal a significant blow to the Empire. Remember why we fight? For our fallen, for our freedom, and for a future where we can live without fear. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Sarah's eyes met those of her comrades, and she saw the same determination reflected back at her. They were ready. The journey to the stronghold was tense. They moved through the shadows, avoiding patrols and security drones. The silence was punctuated only by the occasional whispered command or the soft rustle of movement. They reached the maintenance tunnels without incident. The entrance was a narrow, rusted grate hidden behind a cluster of old machinery. One by one, they slipped inside, the darkness swallowing them. The tunnels were cramped and damp, the air thick with the smell of decay. Sarah led the way, her flashlight cutting a path through the gloom. Each step echoed, a reminder of the danger they faced. After what felt like hours, they reached the lower levels of the stronghold. The hum of machinery and distant voices told them they were close. Sarah signaled for the group to halt. Team 1, you know your objective. Create the diversion and give us the time we need. Team 2, with me. We head to the command center. The team split, moving with practiced efficiency. Sarah's team navigated the maze of corridors, avoiding detection with a mix of skill and luck. They reached the command center, a heavily guarded room at the heart of the stronghold. Sarah peered around the corner, assessing the situation. 2 guards at the entrance. We need to take them out quietly, she whispered to Jarek. He nodded, signaling to 2 fighters armed with silenced blasters. They moved swiftly, dispatching the guards before they could raise an alarm. Sarah led the way into the command center, her heart pounding. Inside, the room was filled with consoles and screens, manned by a handful of officers. Sarah raised her blaster. "Nobody move," she commanded, her voice cold and authoritative. The officers froze, their eyes wide with fear. Jarek and the others secured the room, disabling the communication systems and taking control. Sarah approached the main console, her fingers flying over the controls. She connected to the Imperial network and began broadcasting a message. "This is Sarah of the Resistance. The Empire's tyranny ends now. Rise up, fight back, and take your freedom." Her voice echoed through the stronghold and beyond, reaching allies and oppressed citizens across the galaxy. As the message spread, the stronghold erupted into chaos. Explosions from Team 1's diversion shook the walls, and alarms blared. Sarah's team held their ground, fending off waves of soldiers trying to reclaim the command center. Sarah's focus was unwavering. She knew that every second they held the command center was a victory. Her comrades fought bravely, their determination and skill shining through. The battle was fierce, but they were relentless. Jarek fought beside her, his cybernetic arm a blur of motion as he took down soldier after soldier. "We're holding, but we can't stay here forever," he shouted over the din of battle. Sarah nodded, her mind racing. They had accomplished their primary goal, but they needed to survive to continue the fight. Fall back to the tunnels. We've done what we came here to do. The retreat was as chaotic as the assault. They moved quickly, covering each other as they made their way back to the maintenance tunnels. The stronghold was in disarray, with Imperial forces struggling to regain control. As they emerged from the tunnels and into the safety of the night, Sarah took a deep breath. The mission had been a success, but the cost had been high. She looked at the faces of her comrades, battered but victorious. "We did it," Jarek said, his voice filled with a mix of exhaustion and triumph. "We struck a blow they won't forget." Sarah nodded, her thoughts with those they had lost along the way. This is just the beginning. We keep fighting until the Empire falls. The resistance fighters dispersed, returning to their safe houses and hideouts. Sarah stood alone for a moment, looking up at the night sky. She thought of John, of Alex, and of all the lives that had been torn apart by the Empire. "We'll make them pay," she whispered, a fierce determination burning in her chest. "For you, for all of us."